Hi everybody, it's Colin Stevenson, joined by one of the most greatest minds of all times and my hero, John Lenhart. Hi John.
Hi.
Now, John, we are so far at SC Johnson Wax. We have got quite a lot of your stories still to go. We are on the edge of our seats because of what we've spoken about up until now. Now, today, I would like to talk to you about your favourite job, I believe. I believe you have a favourite job. Now, out of all what you've done, I can't pick my favourite story as of yet because everything has led and it's all been part of the bigger picture. And you know me, big picture thinker. So I would love to understand why your job and what job's your favourite.
Okay, so we're at SC Johnson Wax. And remember, I'm this, I've been all through all of these four Myers-Briggs. Yeah. At Procter & Gamble, my first job, and at Dial, my third job, I was a manager. At Dow, my second job, and SC Johnson Wax, my fourth job, I was a technical person. So I'm sitting in this company being a technical person. I want to be a manager again. And I asked to be a manager. They say I'm too young. I have all these headhunters talking to me because of all the stuff I've been doing. I say I want to be this manager, and they all tell me I'm too young. At this time, I'm 33, and everybody told me when you're 35, we'll come get you to be a manager. So I have to wait 2 years. I went to my boss, and I talked about her, Judy. I had this boss. She was great, very bright, very just a great leader. And I gave her my resume. I just flat out told her, here's my resume. What needs to be on this resume for me to become a manager in 2 years? Basically, I want to rewrite this resume right now, add whatever it needs to be, and then I'm going to spend 2 years doing that. One of the things she says is you haven't run any budgets. That's why she gave me a budget. I told you the one story about she gave me a budget and I did this testing. So she had done that. We had bought Dracket. Johnson Wax was doing so well. They bought this company from Cincinnati, Dracket, that made Drano and all these other products. They absorbed all those people. And they said there were no promotions. And then somebody from Dracket got promoted at Johnson Wax. And I went to my boss and said, I thought no one's getting promoted. And she, to her credit, her integrity, she just went, you're right. You're right. I told you no one's getting promoted. Someone got promoted. I was wrong. So I'm looking at how do I get out of this company and everything. And one of the things that happens is they tell me that the company is going to do this reorganization and they're going to create these technological platforms. Basically, every product in the company had certain things that were in everything. Like Johnson Wax was one of the biggest aerosol companies. Every product they made, they put into an aerosol. All these products had surfactants, all these products had stabilizing agents. They all had these different things. And I was told I was up for the surfactant job and the fragrance job. Clearly, I could get the surfactant job because I was one of the 5 best surfactant people in the world. However, they asked me to not apply for it and to apply for the fragrance job. There was like this backroom deal. Apply for the fragrance job because no one knows that. And we got some older guy, we have an older guy that we can fit into the surfactant. And if you applied for it, you'll get it and he won't. And they're finagling these things together. And I'm sitting there going, I don't want to be this technical expert. I want to be this more of a manager. Well, the executive vice president of R&D, not the vice president, but this guy who was in charge of like everything and was one of the major people in the company, he had an assistant. And that assistant had served his term and was coming off, and they were going to look for somebody else. And I was the lead candidate for the job. So I could become the assistant, the executive vice president. I could be sitting in all these rooms with the president, with the chairman. I could be sitting with all these people. There was another guy who had come up from Dracket. He wanted that job. He was told I was the number 1 candidate. He came over and asked me, what is it you want to do? And I said, well, I want to be a manager. I figure I'll do this and then they'll promote me out of that position to manager. He called up headhunters looking for a job for me, and I got a call for a job.
No.
Smart guy. Think about it, smart guy.
Yeah.
So I get this call and they said, there's this company, up in De Pere, Wisconsin. I'm down in Racine. This is like, 2 hours north. There's this company up in Green Bay or De Pere, Wisconsin, and they're looking for a director of technical services. So this manager over all the technical aspects of this company. And I told the headhunter, I'm 33, I'm not 35, call me in 2 years. He goes, nope, we want you. They want you. They looked at your resume. I'm like, how did you get my resume? Well, it's this guy giving my resume. So I said, I am not going to do this because I'd gotten turned down so many times for not being 35. I said, I am not going to take this interview until you tell me you told the owner of the company that I'm 33 and you come back and tell me that. He goes, fine. I don't know if he didn't tell him. I don't know why he called back and said, they're fine. So I'd be reporting to the owner of this company. So I scheduled the interview, and Colin, this is one of the most outrageous interviews you're ever going to hear. If you don't believe, if anybody doesn't believe my story to date, you're never going to believe what happened here. I travel up to this company. They're in like a 30,000 square foot facility. They're doing pretty well, but it is kind of run down. And I'm looking at this going, I'm basically going to be the star. I'm going to be the big fish in the little pond. Because if you notice, all four of the companies I went to, they got smaller and smaller, and I got higher and higher. Well, finally, I'm going to be reporting to the number one guy. They do a personality test on me. They're like, do you mind taking one of these? I'm thinking, I've been I actually told them, I've taken the Myers-Briggs 4 times. I've been 4 different Myers-Briggs. No, they have a different test. It printed out 30 pages. It was a 30-page analysis. So I did one of these tests. That's great. They give me the Wonderlic test. So I don't know if you know what that is. It's an intelligence test. It's 50 questions. It's a time test, 12 minutes, and the questions get progressively harder. 18 is an average score. A person of 8 gets an 18's average intelligence. He used it because the test says you got to be 30. You got to get a 30 to be a manager. I took the test. I didn't know what I got. Later, I found out a year later when he was at a conference and we had a couple drinks, he told everybody, yeah, I got in the low 40s.
Nice.
So he was like, and he did had a PhD come in who got like a 34. He was like, this guy shows up and he gets in the low 40s. He's the smartest guy I've ever. And he goes, and he tells the story, like, I didn't know what to say to this guy. So at the time I'm sitting in his office. He's looking at the Wonderlic score. He's looking at this, and he's like, I don't know what to do. And all of a sudden he gets a knock on the door, and the guy who's their technical guy in the lab says, we have this issue. And the owner says, do you want to solve a problem? I go, absolutely. Let's go solve a problem. So I go in the lab, and the lab is, I'm going to say it was 12 feet by 6 feet. This lab was nothing. There was one scale. In fact, when I went in there, I go, we'll get more than one scale when I come here. So I got one scale. I got all the stuff. The technical person's standing there, and the person in charge, this was a truck washing issue. The person in charge of that, the manager, the business manager, was standing at the doorway. And so I'm going, what's the problem? And he had this retained sample in a container, and at the bottom, there was stuff falling out. He goes, one of our formulas, there's stuff falling out. So how do you solve this? So I said, do you have another container like this? He gave me another container. I took the cap and the container, I put it on the balance, and I tared it to 0. Then I took his bottle, cap and container, put it on there, and it was like 200 grams or 200 milliliters of water. Then I filled water into the tear that it was the same level of the sediment. And it came out like, I'm going to say something like 1.5 grams. And I said, so what do you have in this formula that's at like 0.75%? And he's standing there, he's looking at me with the data book, and he's going, I said, let me see the formula. He goes, we're not showing you the formulas. I'm like, okay. What do you have in there is 0.75%? He looks at it, he goes, I have 2 ingredients. I go, well, are they organic or inorganic? And he goes, it's inorganic, or it's organic. I said, well then, or he said, it's inorganic. I said, well then, cut the top off of this, take that, wash it in ethanol, and you'll be able to analyze it. Or no, he said, he goes, there's one of each. I goes, inorganic, organic. He goes, it's one of each. I said, cut the top off that, wash it in ethanol. If it goes soluble, it's organic. If it goes insoluble, it's inorganic. The guy at the door turned and took off.
Of course it does.
To the president. And I'm sitting there and he's like, okay. And so we kind of went through it, figured out what it was, solved the problem. I walked back in and the owner's just sitting there like this guy comes in, he's the smartest guy, and he solved one of our problems that no one else could solve, and he did it in like 5 minutes. So he makes me an offer. He says, how much do you need? I said, it's this amount. And I knew from the headhunter that he had tried to hire this guy from California for that same amount I was asking. The guy agreed, didn't get on the plane, asked for 10,000 more. Agreed, didn't get on the plane, asked for 10,000 more, never showed up. I know I could have gone 20,000 more, but I was happy it's a good amount. And I didn't want him to look at me and have this higher expectation. I wanted to come in under low expectations because I was going to be running a lot of this. I was going to be kind of the manager of the techno. I was going to kind of straddle both of these. And we agreed to that amount. And then basically I ended up taking that job. When I went back to Johnson Wax, I said, hey, I'm going to be taking this job. And they were trying to offer me anything. And I said to them, I met with the vice president of R&D, and I said, I'm just trying to figure out if I can be a manager. I know the job of a manager is not whether you can do the job, it's whether you can sleep at night. I just want to see if I can go do this job, be in charge, and sleep at night. Because if I'm going to worry when I'm not at work, then I'll come back here and I'll be your technical guy. He said, doors always open. So I went to this company to be their director of technical services and report to the, basically was the vice president, but he didn't have any vice president titles at the time. So I was reporting to the owner of the company. And then there were 2 marketing and sales people for 2 different divisions that were my peers.
That's mega. So when the door was left open, did you think there was a chance that you were going to go back, or did you just say that to kind of just keep the peace and then you knew that you were on your path?
Oh, I thought there was a chance because this job scared me.
Right, okay.
This job was, I'm reporting, I'm the number 3 person in the company, basically, and I'm reporting right to the owner. And maybe this is all going to go bad, or maybe I get so focused, maybe at night I'm going to be just doing my job and I'm not going to be able to be personal, do all this other stuff. So I was afraid it was just going to be too overwhelming.
Right, okay, now that makes sense. So when did you take the leap? Was it an instantaneous thing, or did you?
Before I took the leap, I wrote a 20-page paper on how I came up with a model for the nose and the brain. And I don't know if you're a Young Frankenstein fan, if you've ever seen the movie Young Frankenstein. One of the guys that lived in my house when I worked at Procter & Gamble, he was a big Young Frankenstein fan. We also quoted it, and I'm a big Gene Wilder fan, obviously, with Willy Wonka. The name of the book was How I Did It. So I wrote a report and I titled it How I Did It, because that was kind of a nod to Gene Wilder and Young Frankenstein. But I wrote this report of how I came up with this model for the nose and the brain so that they would have that as a record. And then I went on my way.
That's mega. So also, this had come from just back at your previous, in this kind of role that you're in at the moment. You've got this model that's obviously we're going to talk about going forward, because this is where obviously right down the line is where you and I spoke about exactly where we're going. So you've written this 20 pages, you've now left, you're now on your way to being a manager.
Manager and technical. So my first day on the job, I get in the lab, and the guy who's going to work for me in the lab, their scientist, says, we got 5 problems. And he names all 5. And I did my classic, there are 5 fires, 5 urgent importance. Remember the project management, we're talking about it. I said, I can only solve 1 at a time. What's the most urgent fire? He goes, but the other 4. And I said, and the other 4 have been burning for how long have you had these problems? They've had these problems 6 months. Every day he comes to work, tries to stamp out 5 problems. And for 6 months, he's had the same problem. I said, we are going to leave today with 1 of the problems gone. So one of the problems was we had this cherry foam that was dyed pink, and we were staining white cars. So how can we stop staining white cars? And his point was, this formula gets put on the cars at 400 to 1. So 400 parts of water, 1 part of this. So we'd make a 401 solution, he'd put it on a white plate and go, there's no way it stains. And I'm like, this has been my career. Like, that's your internal test. That is your internal test. So what I did, I brought 2 things together. One is we need a test that isn't reality, it ought to mirror reality. Second of all, I want to know what in this formula is causing the staining. So I took a drop of the straight pot product, put it on a white plate, and let it dry. I rinsed it, nice, like pink dot, solid pink dot on this plate. He goes, that never happens. I said, I put one of our competitors on there, let it dry, rinsed it off, no dot. So I understand that what I just did doesn't happen, but what I just did must happen in reality, even though it doesn't happen the way I did it. Now, one of my favorite things to do, and I've saved it for this point in formulation, one of my favorite things to do is when I get a formulation, so I would go into a company and they would give me these formulations, whatever I was working on, all the dial, all these places, when they give me a formula, I said, I have this ability, like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Amadeus.
No.
So in Amadeus, Salieri, this guy who's in opposition to Mozart, Mozart's wife gives him all these works Mozart has done to say, are any of these good? And he opens one and you hear the music in his head. And he looks at another one and you hear the music. I have the same thing. If you show me a formula, I hear music. When I look at a bad formula, I hear Mary Had a Little Lamb. When I look at a good formula, I hear a symphony. So I can just look at a formula and go, this is what's going on. Now, what are the parts of the formula? The only way to know what each part does is to make the formula without each part. So at every company, one of the first steps I would do is I would look at their formula and I would make a formula. So if there's 8 things in this formula, I'm going to make 8 formulas, and each formula is going to be missing one of the 8 things. Now, when you look at it, you can see, well, these are unstable. Now I know this thing helps with stability. Now I know this thing helps with cleaning. Now I know. I always want to take that formula and know what each part does, but I'm doing it backwards.
Yeah.
I'm figuring it out by not having it, not by only having it. So a lot of people go, well, this contributes that. It contributes more than that, because when you have everything but that, you also lose these other things.
Yeah.
So now I made this formula without each part. And obviously, if the dye's not in there, that doesn't stain. But there was another ingredient that if that's not in there, it doesn't stain. So now I knew the dye obviously causes staining, but there was an ingredient we had that caused staining. And I needed to replace that ingredient. I replaced that ingredient, no staining. You can leave it on, no staining.
So
one day, one fire, gone.
And was that ingredient, was that like penetrating the lacquer or penetrating something, and it was the porous parts?
So the explanation is that these cars, back when I was a kid, these cars had a layer of paint like this on it. And then a rock would hit it and it would chip.
Yeah.
And a big old portion of paint would come off. Today, cars have 4 layers and they are micro thin. On your car, you have a bonding or a coating to the metal. Then you have the color. Then you have this other coating, and then you have like a clear coat on top of it. There's 4 layers. A white car reflects more light. The darkest car, I'm going to say it this way, the hottest car is not a black car. The hottest car is this dark blue car. But think about the clear coat for a second, because that's the upper surface. White, UV rays come through the clear coat and damage it. And what does the white paint do? Reflect all of it and damage it. White cars have their clear coats damaged more than any other car.
That makes so much sense.
When the clear coat gets damaged, the surface area, so you have a certain surface area, there's 1 square inch. When it gets damaged, you could have a square foot when over used to be a square inch because there's all of this. So you spray this 400-to-1 on this surface area. So now the water and everything starts wicking away, and it's hot and it's white. It flashes off the water, it holds the dye, super concentrates it. And now when you rinse it off, the dye stains it. So you have to have a white car that's clear coat has been damaged. So it's an older white car down in the southern climate or on a hot day. And the effect is, it's like you put the stuff on straight.
That's mega. So most people would think as well that they've just went to school there, because I would have thought a black car was the hottest car as well. So, and I didn't realize that the sun actually reflects off the white to cause damage to the lacquer. So every day the school day. So carry on. So you've managed to take away the staining. It now no longer stains. That's 1 fire out. So there's still 4 left.
Right. So I want to go to psychology here for a second. So notice what I did. I can tell you the truth. I say the how that staining occurred because of these techniques. When I look at a formula, what I used to always say to people, this was like one of my mantras. I'd say whenever they'd give me a formula, I'd say, can I have the 5 formulas previous to it? And they go, why? It's this formula. This formula is not dropped out of the sky, the formula. This formula is this formula because the formula before it had an issue, and you made this formula to respond to that. Back when I was on Liquid Tide was this formula because this formula had an issue and they did this and this formula. And I used to say to people, a formula is like a person.
Yep.
This formula's been on a journey, and I'd like to know where it's been, because what I'm looking at is not what the formula ought to be. I'm looking at what the formula had to do to cope with the world. And this brings in a huge point. There's complex and simple systems. A simple system is a bicycle. You turn the pedals and anybody can go, oh, I see. You turn the pedals and the wheel turns. A complex system is you don't see it. I turn the key. Why does the car start up?
Yeah.
So that's a complex system. This is a simple system. A non-adaptive system is a system that can be returned back to its original. So you have a car, it runs a certain way. You turn the carburetor, it runs differently. You turn it back, it runs the same way. Adaptive system is it won't return. And that's the classic example. One of the most famous psychological experiments done over 100 years ago is these workers in a plant had a certain productivity. They turned the lights up. They had more productivity. They turned the lights back to where they were. They had even more productivity. You can't make them get back. So I always ask people, do you think humans are simple or complex? Do you think they're adaptive or non-adaptive? People think people are complex, non-adaptive. We all know people are complex, but we think they're non-adaptive. We think, look, I don't care what you're dealing with right now. I don't care what you've gone through. I'm going to say this and you're going to go back to where you were.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a robot. So I saw these formulas were adaptive. This formula is a certain way, and it caused the plant to be a certain way. You look at a formula, you go, why didn't you put this surfactant in? It would have caused this. Because we buy a lot of this other surfactant and it's cheaper. Oh, so this surfactant would be better, but you'd have to buy it in smaller quantities. It'd be more expensive. Or you have this other surfactant that's cheaper. You can use a little more. It doesn't quite get you there, but it gets you there enough. We threw a Band-Aid on it. That's why this formula is a Band-Aid. So what's funny about all this is I, not knowing this, began to deal with people the way I formulated. I've shown you I was one of the best 5 formulators in the world. I understood the product all the way back, where it's come from. I understood how to keep it going a certain way. And I was one of the best. And when I started dealing with people, I treated people the same way as what I formulated. And because I used to say, this is like a person. That's why you treat a person. You introduced me to Dr. Ellie Harper.
Yeah.
Dr. Ellie Harper taught me that every psychologist, the most important thing for every psychologist to know is how they approach a client, how they approach helping somebody. And you know what they use? You know what word they use to say, what is your approach to helping this person?
Nope.
What's your formulation?
And not only do they go from the effects forward, they don't try and trace it back to find out where the cause was either, which is very difficult. So it's the opposite form of formulation that they use.
If you rewatch these videos, everything I've said about the way other people have formulated products is how psychologists formulate their plan to help people.
Yep. Now,
This is what I was doing. Is I was all of a sudden, you're going to see it in this job, is I started being a psychologist to people and treating them like they were products the way I'd formulated, and all these people got better.
Yep.
Ellie showed me a book on formulation, and I'm thinking about writing a chapter or writing an article about how a chemical formulator formulates their products versus how other people did it, because how other people do it is in this book, how all these psychologists are formulating.
yes.
They're all formulating effective cause, they're all formulating experience, and they're all formulating to make 100 of them, and maybe one of them will work.
Yep, and that is why the world is in the state it's in with mental health. Now, to go back to your story slightly, right? When you're saying to me, like, you've done this, you're now doing this formulation, you're now working with this with people, and they got better, is because obviously you were looking at the things you can't see by looking the other way, which takes us back to your synthesis approach.
Right. What is this product supposed to be, and why is it off track? That's my entire formulation career was, what is this product supposed to be? Okay, I look at it and I go, I hear this song, and then you tell me it's supposed to be, and I hear this better song, and then it's like, how do I go from this song to this song? Well, why? Well, why did we get on this path? I'm going to get it on another path, or I'm going to get it on a better path. At Dial, we're not going to be, this product is not tied. We were a fast follower. That's what they said at Dial. Purex is not tied. Purex cannot clean everything. Tide can clean everything. Purex is this fast follower. How quickly can you make this product be 80% as good as Tide? I'm going to help Purex be better at being a fast follower than Tide is at being the best product. I'm not going to make Purex better at Tide than being Tide. The key to Purex being successful is Purex is a better Purex than Tide is a Tide. It wins. That's all I did for people. That's all I did for you, Colin. Yeah. Colin, your goal is not to be better than other people. Your goal is to be the best Colin. You will beat everybody. If you're the best Colin, if you're a better Colin than they are them, you're going to get ahead. That's what I brought to psychology. That's what I brought to helping people. And it seemed ridiculous because nobody in psychology would ever take that approach.
Absolutely not. And you and I had the conversation off camera last week when I said there's nobody in the world that can do what I do. And you said to me, Colin, there's nobody in the world that can do what you do. I didn't say I was the best. You didn't say I was the best. But we both admitted that I was doing my thing my way, which means nobody else could do it that way. And if they tried, they wouldn't succeed. They would need to try and look at the formula. They would need to go from the effects to cause again. And everything that you've just said there ties in with our conversation. It's spot on.
So I knocked out all 5 of those tough issues, and I found out why they hired me. So I didn't know why they hired me, but then all of a sudden I found out why. There was another company in the same town, and they made equipment, and they had invented this touch-free cleaner that goes around, measures the car. And they had made this company big. This company was booming because of that equipment company. This equipment company was taking off, and they had all their distributors rep this chemical company. Well, there was a falling out between these two guys, And the owner of the other company, his name was Red Lewis. Red is this, we'll talk about Red down the road here. Red started this equipment company basically from nothing. And he now wanted to not work with this chemical company anymore. He wanted to work for this company, Blue Coral. And so really, I'm in this industry, this professional car washing and professional truck washing industry is what I'm in. And Blue Coral and Red Lewis said, we're going to close the doors. And I was working for a company called Cleaning Systems. We're going to close their doors in 18 months. I was hired to make sure this company didn't go away. So somebody else now had blatantly said, you know, here I was going to other companies and going after other people. Now I'm on the other side of this. Other people going, we're going to ruin you. Yeah. And I got pulled into this company and I'm going, oh no, I gotta, like, these are two big companies and they're going to ruin this little company, this little mom and pop that grew to something big. How do I help them transition through this, dealing with being shut out? So they were going to wreck them. And one of the things I did was I was trying to work in the plant and get things more efficient and save some money and do things. And the plant said, we're all over the place. And I did some analysis, just like I did at Johnson Wax. And I said, I can predict how much sales. They go, it's random. I go, it's not. And I wrote down a number and I was 0.07% off. No. So I was dead on. And the reason I figured it out is I realized their distributors ordered in truckload quantities and they had a certain rate. So if they ordered every 5 weeks, this guy could order this month, then he's not going to order next month, then he's going to order the month after. If someone ordered 3 times, everything was regular. I was showing them there's regularity in your company. You don't even notice it. You're looking at the effects and you're seeing all this randomness. But if you get down to the causes, you can predict all this. So that's all I was doing, was I was predicting this. The sales and marketing VP quit. We went to this international car wash show and I was basically the smartest chemical person, because this is all a bunch of guys that are just burning stuff off the cars. I had like the best time at this show, sitting in a booth and challenging people and then teaching them as administrator teacher. The reason why I love this job is I was full-blown administrator teacher. I was teaching these customers how to go and argue with my competition. And I would have a line of people going, teach me something else. And I was teaching all these customers from all over the country to go argue with these chemical people and be smarter chemical people. So it was a blast. It was the Bond villain. I was causing all this trouble. I was loving it, but I was proving, look, come to our company. We're the best people. We're the smartest. We know what we're doing and we can solve your problems. And I was showing that Blue Coral, I showed that something Blue Coral said was something they should have learned freshman year college chemistry. Okay. And I gave them information to push back to do that. And I taught all these courses in cleaning. What I used to say is cleaning is simply removing a soil from the surface. And I used to say to them, I'd say, Colin, no offense, you're a soil. That chair you're sitting on is a surface. There's 3 ways to get you off of that surface. You know, these guys, because they're all like Wild West. None of these guys have a college degree, but they're business owners. I'm dealing with these business owners and they're street smart. And so they're just sitting there like teach me. And I'm simplifying it. I go, one way is I can take a machete and just cut column up. Because that's like using acid or caustic. That's when you put acid or caustic on your car. That's all you're doing. You're just cutting the soil up. You might cut up the chair and there's no column anymore. There's pieces of column anywhere, but I'm probably going to damage the chair. Yep. There's another way is I could physically grab you by the shoulders and pull you out of the chair. We call those chelators or bonders, like phosphates. There were phosphates and they were using phosphates and they pull the soil. There's another way where I don't even have to touch the soil. And I used to say, hey, Colin, free beer over here. And they would all smile. I go, what's going to happen? His energy is going to make him want to be here. That's surfactants. That's why I describe surfactants, these guys. What, this didn't work? Oh, glass of wine. The surfactant has to match the uniqueness of the person. Yeah. And that's where you bring in all this. Everybody, I go, they're basically racist. The way they're using their surfactant is racist. and they're not using these great surfactants. I'm a surfactant formulator. We know what that soil is, and we are coaxing and that's why we don't damage the system. We had all these benefits. But I was explaining this to them. They'd go back and ask all these questions because they had a model. They did it in their words, and they were destroying the technical experts at every other company because I was teaching them. So I was educating up the consumer to be smarter than the suppliers. And Blue Coral and Red said, we're not going to be able to close your doors. And they gave up.
Yes. So not only did they not close the doors, I take it the company lifted its status up as well in terms of the problems that were there that were no longer, that were dissolved. Excuse my terminology there, pardon the pun. And then obviously you've managed to stop, so the panic is gone, which that would leave them space to grow, I'd imagine.
Right. We won a Wisconsin Manufacturers a Year award for some of the things we're doing. The other thing I used to do is I used to travel around and I used to teach, and I actually did a class to have all these salespeople get sent to me, and we teach them over 3 days. And my whole thing was, and so this will sound real familiar, I wasn't going to give them a bunch of stuff to memorize. I was going to give them a model that they would have to apply through their uniqueness in any situation. And I used to take them to a car wash, and I'd say, gentlemen, there's been a murder committed at this car wash. It's a mystery. What's happened here is a mystery. That was my approach. Every time I walked under a car wash, I go, there's a mystery here. Now, how do we solve this mystery? And I'd take them through, look at this and get this piece of information. Look at this. The first step was getting enough of the right information. Then we'd put it through the model. Then we'd make a prediction about what we think the customer is dealing with. Then we'd talk to the customer, and I taught them how to problem solve. A large part of what I did was problem solve. So I didn't have them memorize a ton of stuff. I had them understand principles or truth and then express it through their uniqueness. And these guys all became the best at selling, and they started selling for us like crazy. And yeah, the everything about this company rose, and it's all I do with psychology. I do the same thing. So I have one more story to finish this off with. So like I said, we were a car wash company. We were a truck wash company. And my parents lived down in Ohio. I was going down to visit my parents. I'm in Ohio. And I get a call from work. We're having a problem at a truck wash in Seville, Ohio. That's near Cleveland. It's where a lot of interstates come together. And we were supplying a detergent to a truck wash in Seville, Ohio. And they're having problems. The water treatment plant wants to shut them down because we're causing all this foaming at the water treatment plant. And I'm like an hour and a half away. And they're like, we don't want to bother you. I go, you know what? I want to head up there. And so I got a chance to say to my dad, hey, do you want to come with me while I solve a problem?
Nice.
So now I'm going to show my dad how I solve a problem. Do you want to come? He's like, sure. You know, I think he's like, I'm trying to figure out what you do. So we drive up there, and I'm doing the whole, there's been a murder committed at this truck wash. And I'm looking at it, and I know we make this detergent that I know the bubbles break down easy. But I'm getting all the facts and everything. I know they're running everything right. I could see it. So I'm like, where's the water treatment plant? And they show me where the water treatment plant is. So I got to wait outside the gate. I say, could you call the guy? So I'm going to say this kid, again, remember what I said about back at Dial, these people in charge of the water treatment plant, they get the lowest pay of the chemical engineers. Well, this guy was like he was the son of the city manager. He's in this pickup truck. Now, Seville is this real small town that has this really active truck wash and everything. And their water treatment plant is small. So I go, show me where the problem is, because they say there's bubbles going into the creek. They walk me over to the retention pond. I look and I say, those aren't my bubbles.
Right, okay. So
They're not my bubbles.
you knew without even doing anything.
These bubbles were really small bubbles like shaving cream are
Yeah.
going to stick around a long time. I made a detergent with really big bubbles, which fall apart. These are not my bubbles. And I said to him, I said, do you guys have like some people call it a quarter car wash or a self-serve car wash. Do you guys have a self-serve car wash in town? Do you have another car wash? He goes, no. I go, do you have a self-serve? Yeah. Where's it at? I drive down the road. When you have the foam brush, when you have the brush, it puts out this pink foam. It's like shaving cream. Oh man. I took a sample of that and I said, this is where it's from. And they go, well, and I did a demonstration. If you take his stuff out to like 100,000 to 1, and you take my stuff out to like 10 to 1, which it's never going to run, and you shake him, mine will form a bubble and it'll collapse. Theirs will form bubbles. I'm like, it's chemistry. It's different surfactants. We're not, all surfactants are the same. I don't see color, all surfactants are the same. No. So I ended up proving that, solving it. They ended up telling, the guy was one of the buddies in town. They ended up telling the guy, hey, turn everything down. Turn it down. Foam went away. Wasn't our problem because I knew the cause. I knew what a bubble looked like, but it's funny. Like, people are always like, yeah, John Lenhart walked up to a water treatment plant and went, those are my bubbles. Like I said, I am not impressed with the technology at water treatment plants or the people running them. I'm just not.
Yeah. So I can't get away with this. So the guy, you literally went and did this. You've said it's not your bubble. You went and you proved to us it is. And when you said to the guy to turn it down, did he have to make less of a mixture? And
He just didn't make it as rich and foamy. He turned it down.
Now, this is us on part one. I do believe that next week or Thursday, we will have part two of this story. Is this going to carry on from what you've just done with your dad? Because I want to know your dad's reaction. If not, I would like it just now, if you don't mind, please.
My dad was just quiet. He's teacher perceiver. He's just quiet. And it was real efficient. And he, like I said, he's a fix-it guy, but chemicals are something you can't touch.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm like my dad. I can fix stuff, but I'm not, I can fix things I touch. I'm not as good as him. That he works with his hands. He can touch and fix anything. And he's a woodworker, but I fix stuff you can't touch. And it's just, I think he could see it as a different world. And I think he was real quiet about it. But yeah, we're going to talk about the job morphed into a full-blown administrator teacher paradise.
Yes, excellent. I love it. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to that. And thank you very much for today. It's been amazing as usual. And I will speak to you soon. Take it easy.